A couple of weeks ago, I've released Show Me on my own record label UNDRSIEGE Recordings, and today we'll be looking at how I've created the track. Usually my stuff comes together kind of quickly, but for this record it was a different story. I went through loads of different versions to come to the end result that's out now. So I'm gonna try and guide you through the process. So let's dive in. I'll show you the project folder real quick. So you can see I've done quite a few versions, and this is like the final one I landed on before I started working on the final one. So let's have a listen. This is what it sounds like. So that's fairly close to the one that's out now, if we compare real quick. Kind of different, but kind of the same as well, if you know what I mean. So let's go through this, because I bounced some audio stems from this and then went into the new project. So the one thing that was always there from the beginning kinda was the piano lead. Which is actually fairly simple. I used this to create it. It's a free emulation of the classic Korg M1 piano that's been used over and over again in house music, but it just gives you that sound that you kind of want. It's just basic chords, very standard chord progression. What I did with this one, I think I played it in by hand and then quantized it to have like a human feel velocity. If you like paint it in, all the velocity is at the same level and then you get a different feel. I can show you the difference. Subtle difference, but I preferred this to having everything at max. So this is what I basically started with, is just the piano and the vocals. And it's that, for me, that vocal and the piano, it worked so well together, and I knew I had to do something with it, but I just couldn't land on the version that I liked. So I planned the release date, so I know I had to finish it, and then I came back to, like, I left it for a couple of months, came back to this version, and then I was like, okay, I'm sure about the piano, I'm sure about the vocal, and the bass line, the notes are fine, sounds I wasn't happy with. So I bounced stuff out, and then I opened a new project to like create new drums basically. So the piano is what stayed. What stayed as well is I got rid of these, I think, which are just strings playing the same chords. Wasn't feeling it. These steps, I think they are in the final one. think they just gave some nice harmonies to the piano chords. And this is from the F9 synth library. So it's basically sampled synths and then transformed into a Ableton instrument. The bass, yeah. Like the notes were fine, just following the chords, but sound I wasn't feeling. I think I had a classic 909 sounding kick, which didn't give me the low end energy that I was looking for. And then the drums were also kind of classic 909-ish, but just it wasn't working for me. So I bounced out the piano and the strings and I started a new project, and we'll dive into that one now. So this is a project that I started with the bounced files from the previous one. So as you can see, I got the pianos here in audio, a layer, so I was happy with the piano, but like my first and my second drop, they were kind of similar, and I thought like I need something else. Tried a few ideas, but nothing was really landing. And then I think I just copied like the chords, the piano chords, and I flicked through some presets on the analog lab, and then I landed on this thing, which I think sounded pretty cool. So it's something that doesn't support poly chords, so it just transforms the chords into a single lead sound. But together with the pianos, I thought like it gave me the kind of emotion that I was looking for. And then I also added like a simple arpeggiator melody. Again, it's nothing special. Some basic Serum wavetables, but it just adds a little bit of melodic info to the record. So altogether we have this. So you can barely hear that arpeggiator melody, but it just fills it out quite nice. And then I also kept like these extra strings that we looked at earlier. I have this in a group because I bounce everything later, and I have just like all my musical elements in one group. So that's pretty basic, to be honest. Also got a high string that's just in the breakdowns. Which is just some saw waves, detuned, and Serum. I've showed this in my previous videos. If you want to see them, go watch them, and I'll show you how I made these exactly. Then the kick. So I said it before, the kick is so important in this kind of music because I changed out the 909 kick for this. And like instant I was like, okay, this is much better. It's a much lower kick, kind of low, but I think it worked much better with what I was trying to achieve. I think this is sampled, yes. And then I added the top from that 909 to give it a little bit of that feel. But I wanted to have that low end punch that I got from this kick. Then I also recreated the bass line. I got this on top. And this for a sub. Oh, so this is actually the bass line from the previous version, bounced to audio, and then imported here, and just added some sidechain because I think it filled out the low end quite nicely, but the top bass wasn't sounding too good. So let me check. So yeah, that's the bass from the version I showed you earlier. EQ'd, and then I use that as my sub bass. The top bass should be here. Yeah, so I tried some different stuff as well, but it didn't work out. I think this should be, let's see. Yeah, so that's a different bass I tried, but it didn't work. And this is the top bass. Which is DX7 from Arturia, I think. And this has a preset Lately Bass, which gives you that old school Lately Bass, which I wanted to use in this record. I freeze that into audio, and then I use that here. So some radiator, just to give it some analog feel. Some EQ, EQing out the low, boosting the mids a little bit. Oops, a little bit of delay, a little bit of reverb, and then sidechain. So usually on bass, you don't want to have delay, you don't want to have reverb, but since this is like the top bass, you can give it some reverb, delay information. It sounds nice, I think. And my sub, which is carrying the low end, doesn't have delays or reverbs. So together they sound like this with the kick. So when I got these elements, I was like, okay, nice, we can work with that. And then I continued with drums. I still used 909 heads, so this is a basic one with the standard 909 kit from Ableton. A little bit of, I think this is a vocoder to give it more character. More hi-hats. Nice rolling one. Another one. Then this is the main. And then some shakers. And a ride. All together they sound like this. Quite a lot of hi-hats, but they fill out the top end nicely. My claps. So layered a couple. All pretty simple. just to give you a nice fat clap. And then percussion. So these are from the previous project. Very simple top loop. Another one. And as always, like, they just add a little bit of character and dirt. And then I got some glitch loops, which I suppose they're doing the same. Adding character and dirt. And then we got a snare roll, which is also from the previous project, and I suppose this is just a 909 from the standard core 909 from Ableton, all together going through a bus. And we have the same as we always have: SSL compressor, radiator or decapitator, something to give a little bit of dirt. And then we EQ out the lows, boosted the mids as well. I suppose I was lacking a little bit of mid on the master, so I was just boosting some stuff there. And then effects, which is a combination of the stuff from the previous project, some extra effects, and that scratch sound. And I think that are all the elements. This is all stuff that I tried and never used. Which leaves us to talk about the vocal, I suppose. Oh, we got these Atmos vocals as well. So this is just some vocal fills to give it a little bit more energy. Classic. This is from the vocals, a vocal step, also from the vocals. From a sample, also from a sample, I think, and another classic vocal step. Just to add like a little bit of the old school character, I suppose. And then we can go into the real vocals. So I got these vocals, which are AI extracted. Love me like you own it, only if you show me, only if you show me. Which a lot of people use these. It's workable, but they sound a bit weird. So I had these re-recorded, which we can hear here. Me, not just when you're lonely. Love me like you own it. Better proof you need. Oh me, I won't give it. But the thing is with re-vocals is you have to process them and you have to do everything yourself, because we're so used, like if you use acapellas or AI extract something, it's been processed, it's been time stretched, it sounds good as is. And if there's one thing I really don't like, then it's stretching out vocals and processing vocals. So luckily I have someone who, I don't know if he loves to do it, but anyway, he does a great job at it. So I send him the re-vocals and he gave me this. I won't give it easy,
Gotta prove you need me, only if you show me. Not just when you're lonely, love me like you own it. Gotta prove you need me, only if you show me.
Which I think is a combination of the re-vocals and the AI extracted, all time stretched, so I can just drop it in and use it as is. He processed them as well for me, so I cannot show you that. I just did some EQ, some Soothe, some more delay, and my CLA vocals just to boost the top a little bit and to give it some more compression. And that's about it, I think. So at this point I was like, okay, I'm happy with what I have. I just cleaned up the project and then I went into another one, so let's go there. So this is the same project but cleaned up. I'll see if there's some different stuff I've done. No, this is the same. I then did 2 channels with the vocals, so this one is in the breaks, I suppose. This one is on the drops. I add some reverb, some vocal automation and some filtering, which is basically just the automation to make sure everything runs smooth. That's the same, that's the same. I think all of the rest stay the same. Maybe some more effects. Yeah, so I did add some extra stuff, but it's all the usual. Yes, I created this riser as well, which is fairly simple. In Serum, you just take like any wavetable you like, you put a filter on it, and then you put an LFO, which you link to the cutoff of that filter, and then you can automate the rate to make it go faster and faster. And then in here, I probably automate the pitch bend, so it goes up an octave, and that gives you that riser. So I don't know if there's much more to talk about when it comes to this.
You say the words, but they're floating me better. I need more than promises, more than a stay. If I give you my heart, boy, don't let it roll. I want something that tells me I'm home. Only if you show me, touch me like you know me. I won't give it easy. Gotta prove you need me. Only if you show me, not just when you're lonely. Love me like you own it. Only if you show me.
So arrangement-wise, in my first version, I had this part dropping straight here. But that was like too much for me, probably trying to arrange it a little bit too much for streaming services. So I just had to let it breathe for a little moment. And I actually quite like the way that the extra sound is coming up there, like that layer. You can hear it coming up with the bass. So this is the final project, which I always do. I bounce everything out into stems, and then you can see like I do minor changes, like the vocals a little bit louder, music a little bit louder, vocals, the Atmos vocals louder, just like minor tweaks basically. And also I can cut my radio edit inside here as well. I did some more de-essing on the vocals, the Soothe, to like tame the harsh frequencies even a little bit more, and I sidechain it a little bit to the kick.
Touch me like you know me. I won't give it easy. Gotta prove you need me. Only if you show me, not just when you're lonely.
On the music, again, EQ, which is doing nothing, and a track spacer. Some EQing on the kick, also EQ doing nothing. Some volume automation, just for the radio edit. So, like in audio, you also see some stuff, and it's just easier to, you don't have the freedom anymore to change stuff. So it is what it is, and you can only do the final tweaks, which usually for me is like EQing and a little bit more side chaining. Yeah, so nothing special here. I think I did change a little bit here, so I shorted the snare and the kick roll here. I think these were running further. But I felt like they needed like a little gap, so I done it like this. So I also got this, which is reverb and delay. I think just to give the vocals and the music a little bit more reverb and delay. Because I felt at this point like everything sounds a bit dry, so let's give it some more effects. And that's everything, I think. Then we got my master, which is again the same as always, my Kramer tape thing, SSL compression, standard clip, very lightly just shaving some peaks off, cutting out lows and the highs. This is boosting my sides a little bit. This is doing nothing. My limiter, first limiter, some inflator, and then my Ozone, which is doing all the heavy lifting when it comes to the finishing touch. A little bit of boost in the high ends, impact, clarity, stabilizer, some dynamic EQ to get out some harsh frequencies, and then my final limiter. I then sent this off to mastering. He usually gives me a little bit more feedback, which I then change, and then we have the final version that you all heard. We can compare the final master to my own master, so let me load that in real quick. So this is the final master. As you see, it's V2, so as I said, I probably got some remarks which I then tweaked, and then I got my final master. So let's compare them real quick. Similar, just more compressed, more squashed, and a little bit louder, I think. Yeah, it sounds a bit more open, a bit more squashed. So that's more or less everything. I hope you like the end result. If you like it, you can go and stream it on Spotify. I'm really happy with the end result. I finally managed to do a piano house record, which I always wanted to do. If you enjoyed this content, you can subscribe to my channel. I try and do one of these every month. So stay tuned for another one. That's it for now. Bye-bye.